Hello, my name is Nicole Keen. This is my Module 1 presentation. I currently teach 8th grade math at UNAMI Middle School in Central Bucks School District, and I teach geometry, algebra 1, and pre-algebra. I have my bachelor's degree from Penn State and my master's degree from Cabrini University. I've chosen STEM because I believe that it will help students create a deeper level of understanding and will help develop their problem-solving skills for future careers. My favorite hobby is baking. My favorite activity is running. And a fun fact about myself is that I recently got married in Newport, Rhode Island. Module 1 focuses on assessment of learning, which are our summative assessments that are data-driven, assessment for learning, which is seen as a formative assessment, and then assessment as learning, which is project-based collaboration. In our text, we read about 7 different strategies that related around 3 questions. Where am I going? Where am I now? And how can I close the gap? In our article, we read about 6 different parts for assessment as learning, which focus on students starting out individually, collaborating with a group discussion, and self-correcting what they found individually, performing an activity or experiment, and then coming up with a group report and perhaps an oral presentation to deliver the information. Things that I saw similar between both the text and the article was that in our text, we learned about how modeling was important in order for students to be able to self-assess themselves in terms of expectations. But also in project-based learning, it would be important for a teacher to model how this approach happens in the learning classroom and how students should collaborate together to understand the experiment. Both focus on self-assessment and ownership of student learning. In our text, it talked about how self-assessment was a big contributor to increased learning. And in the article on page 45, there was a rubric that students were scored on. And part of this rubric was the self-correction guide. So students were held accountable for both or in both types of assessment. And also, it's important that students are sharing their learning either independently through tracking and analyzing their own learning or collaboratively through perhaps an oral presentation or a group report. Some differences that I found was that in our Jan Chappas textbook, it was important that we identify the learning targets in order to guide the direction, but this was found as a challenge in assessment as learning because you don't want to really give away the whole entire lesson to the class before they figure out the experiment on their own. Descriptive feedback, I felt like in the project-based learning environment for assessment as learning, it's a little bit more guided and the teacher may be a facilitator, but that descriptive feedback might not happen throughout the whole entire project, but maybe more so at the end. And then also in our text, it felt like there was a lot more lessons or class periods involved in terms of all of the formative assessment, whereas the project-based collaboration really seemed like it only focused on one lesson and one big idea, although I feel like this could get carried over in time as well. So my philosophy, I really would love to teach problem-based instruction and problem-based learning in a math classroom, but I feel like I currently am aligned a little bit more with the 7 strategies for assessment for learning in my classroom because I focus a lot on formative instruction and a formative assessment before the summative assessments in my class. However, I also think that the most important thing is descriptive feedback, and I could definitely improve on making my feedback more descriptive. And I could also improve on students being able to self-assess themselves in my classroom. So I'm looking forward to exploring a little bit more with problem-based learning and how to make it work in a math classroom, and then also improve currently on the 7 strategies for assessment for learning that I use in my classroom now. And then these are both the references from our text and from the article that we read.